Hi, everybody. This is Loren Baker, founder of Search Engine Journal, and welcome to today's episode of the SEJ Show. With me today, I have Mordy Oberstein. Hey, Mordy, how's it going?
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me, Loren.
Yeah, Mordy Oberstein of Wix.com and a fellow Baltimore Ravens fan.
Whoa. My kid is a Ravens fan, despite the fact that I'm a Steelers fan. Although I have tremendous, I don't view it like, oh, the Ravens. I have respect. Just don't want you to win.
Yeah, I agree. You know, my kid was a Steelers fan as well, and he still has. He won't take it down, which is kind of funny. Even after the past year, he has a huge fat head of Antonio Brown in the Steelers uniform on his bedroom
all
wall.
Players.
Yeah, and he was such an Antonio Brown fan when he was with the Steelers, and he still kept it up. I'm like, you sure you don't want to take the day after he quit, the Bucks? I'm like, sure you don't want to take that down? He's like, no, Daddy, no, I love it. So very cool.
He's a great player. So, yeah. Or was a great player.
Much respect for the Steelers as well. When the Colts left when I was a kid, we weren't allowed to be Redskins fans, so because we had to stick within the AFC. Right. So rooted for the Steelers up until 26 years ago now. Modell brought the team over. So
there you go.
And let's get into SEO though, but the draft is in 2 weeks, so I'll talk to you about football.
All right.
Cool. Who are they targeting, by the way? Steelers.
It's a question of they're going to go for a quarterback still in the first round. They give the 20th pick. So there's rumors that they might still go with the QB and let, Trubisky compete with the rookie.
Okay. All right. As long as that rookie's name is not Baker Mayfield. Awesome. So today we're going to talk to Mordy about, really what to look for in a CMS solution based upon whatever type of business owner or marketer you are, right? There's multiple types out there. There's enterprise, there's self-starters, there's small to medium-sized businesses. There's people that are looking for blogs. There's restaurants that are looking for more of a brochure site. There's all kinds of opportunities out there, all kinds of needs. And then how to pick that CMS system. And then Mordy, you might be a little bit biased in your opinion here because you are the head of SEO. Let me see if I get your title right. Head of SEO branding at Wix.com.
I think that's right.
Okay.
So yeah, that's right.
If you wouldn't mind telling the viewers and listeners a little bit more about yourself, I'd love to hear about your journey, your time spent at Wix.com, at Semrush, who's also a sponsor, by the way, along with InMotion Hosting, and then back to Wix. But I don't want to spoil the story, so I'll handle it.
Oh man. Okay. Well, it all starts. I was working for an educational software company. I used to actually be a teacher in Baltimore City at one point. And I started working for an educational software company after this. And they wanted me. I was one of the only native English speakers. And they said, hey, can you write web content for us? I'm like, I could write anything. I love writing. But what do you want to do with this? They're like, yeah, we want organic traffic. I'm like, great. What's organic traffic? And I started diving into SEO from a content point of view, which I still really love content. Long story short, I ended up at Rank Ranger, one of the other SEO tools. Started, I was their content manager, ended up being their CMO, which was bizarre as anything. That I was, yeah, it's just it's like one of these SEO stories, like a football life. It's an SEO life.
Yeah.
I headed over to Wix. I was their SEO advocate of sorts, and then I jumped over to Semrush. I was still consulting for Wix on their SEO advisory board. I was over at Semrush, their head of communications, and then recently I flipped it. So now I'm consulting for Semrush, but now I'm back at Wix in a larger role around a lot around SEO education, which I know SEO branding doesn't sound like that, but to us, a lot of the branding has to do with we want our users to be proficient in SEO, so that it comes off like, hey, we're a professional platform that you can handle your SEO with. Our users understand SEO. We're interested in SEO. So a lot of the branding actually speaks to user education, which is I personally love as, again, former teacher. I actually love that. So that's on one foot, the whole story.
So you're branding less to the SEO community, or so to speak, and more so to users and people who are utilizing Wix to inform them and educate them about what Wix can do, or how does that work? Or is it kind of
I would say it's maybe 80-20, 70-30 split. So say 20-30% of my time is spent on advocating to the SEO community. I'm informing them what we're doing, talking about what's going on with Wix, and a good majority is around the educational assets, whether it be webinars, courses, working on a possible podcast for our users, to try to get them because SEO is like one of those things. I feel like no matter what course, webinar, podcast you're listening to, particularly this one, right? You should be listening to this podcast. You are listening to this podcast.
Yes, you are. Or watching it.
Or watching it. Is it really a podcast if you're watching it? All right, whatever. Let that slide.
Yeah. We have a conversation about every other week. So
there you go. But no one asset's really going to give it to you. It's like you take that initiative to say, hey, you know what? I was listening to this podcast. They were talking about X, Y, and Z. I got 80% of it, but there's like one or two things I didn't understand. I'm going to go Google that. I'm going to follow up on that. And you sort of, take your own SEO journey. And I find the people who do that, those are the people who really understand SEO or get into SEO. And it doesn't have to be you're an SEO professional, but even if you're just a business owner, there's no one particular asset that you're going to listen to, no particular course that's going to give you that foundation in SEO. Okay, now I can really improve my site. But those kind of assets should stimulate you to learn more. Just kind of what I want for the Wix user. I really want them to take a look at SEO, whether it be a course that we're doing or webinar that we're doing, and say, hey, that was interesting. There were a couple of things that I didn't understand. I want to go research that or ask about that or find out about that, because that's when you really dive into SEO and you're actually able to make a tangible difference on your website. In terms of the branding, so it's important that when people look at Wix, they look at us. To me, it's important, at least. I think I'm speaking for the company when I say this, that when people look at Wix, we are taking care of our user.
Right.
So I don't want people to be like, hey, great that you're, talking to SEO professionals or, the latest Soluses of the world kind of thing. But what about your users? Are you catering to them? Are you talking to them also? I'll give you an inside scoop story kind of thing. So we have an SEO advisory board. So it's Michelle Robbins, Cindy Crum, Nick Leroy, Andrew Optimizing, and Simon Cox.
Okay.
And one of the initial meetings, we're talking with the product team. Where the product team is presenting what they're doing, what we're working on, and it was very much geared to the advanced SEO abilities that an SEO professional or agency would be interested in learning about, or us catering to that. And the board was like, "This is great, and yes, SEO professionals are using Wix, agencies are using Wix, and you should definitely have these features there for them." But we're worried that what happens if your average, SMB, SME is going to look at this? Are they going to mess up their website?
Yeah.
And it was funny to us, like, whoa, it's interesting. Like the board is so interested in making sure that we take care of the average business or the average user, or however you want to describe that. Or the average Wix user is a little bit more complicated than that. It's a wide, spectrum of users, from your SMB to enterprise users. But that kind of clicked in my mind in that moment, that if part of the perception or part of the branding of Wix has to be about Wix making sure that people who are using Wix understand SEO and do a good job with SEO on their site. So that's why I'm so focused.
They have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So I could imagine. And what percentage of your user base are business owners, SMBs, would you say?
This is like a total, I'm making this up because I don't know off the top of my head.
Scientific.
I would say it's like, like an SMB, let's say circa 50-60%.
Okay. All right. So
I think you have SMEs and then enterprise thereafter.
Got you. So you don't want to market to your 30 to 40% then.
Well, we do. We don't want to we don't leave them out.
Yeah.
But you want to, like, the people who need the help, they should be getting the help. I don't think, an enterprise company who's got a million gazillion pages, I'm thinking of in my mind of a new site. They have an SEO, they have an agency that they're using.
Yeah.
I want them to understand SEO, but they have the pocketbook to pay for a real professional to come in. There are SMBs who don't have that luxury of paying, hundreds of dollars an hour for an SEO to come in. Mm-hmm. But I want them to understand SEO enough that we can take Wix is the kind of thing. And again, like, I don't want to, I'm not a good salesman. So I'll say this: closed CMSs in general, and there are good ones and there are bad ones. We could talk about what makes a good, what makes a bad one. And again, different strokes for different folks. But a good CMS or a good closed CMS will take care of the technical things to make sure your site's indexable, that you can, it's crawlable, indexable, and then rankable. So you can kind of focus on creating content or running your business. But if you are someone who's an SEO professional, you can come in and you can customize things. You can do things that you want to do. So it's like, if you're an SMB, you don't have the budget. You have the economy of scale of our SEO team doing things out of the box for you, but giving you the freedom, if you are an SEO, to come in and make the changes that you want to change. A quick example would be like structured data. So let's say courses, products, we create structured data out of the box. One of the things they recently updated a couple of months ago was that you used to be able to do it with a full stack dev tool that's inbuilt into Wix.
Mm-hmm.
But now you can go into the dashboard, or you can customize the out of the box markup that you want. So if you are an SMB and you just want to have that markup there, great. It's there for you. You don't do anything. If you are an SEO and you want to go, I think this should be there, you can go ahead and do that. So that kind of philosophy, I think, is important. Not just about, like, again, I'm not harping on Wix, but if you're looking at a CMS option and you're working with the clients who may or may, when you leave, what's going to happen?
Yeah. So we were talking about this a little bit before we went on. Like in my situation, somehow word got out. It was leaked amongst the basketball dads and moms that I know SEO, right? So what's happened then is all of the restaurant owners and the coaches and some people with smaller businesses have just have tracked me down while I'm trying to mind my business during practice. And they're asking me questions about how they can rank their sites better, get more business from SEO, things like that, right? So one of the first things I always ask them is like, where's their site? How's it powered? A lot of the times it's Wix. A lot of the times it's Squarespace. Sometimes sometimes it would be WordPress. And then there's some like Weebly or some other ones that kind of pop up, right? That kind of shock me from time to time. But it's really interesting to hear from that point of view, because I can't imagine some of the questions that I'm getting, some of those folks going in and trying to configure structured data, right?
Yeah.
And I could see how, like, I know from my experience, typically one small disconnect between the information that's given on the website and the information that's given within the structured markup can totally tank a ranking, right? Tank or just move it down, and then like you fix it and then it's back up again. So I can't imagine like someone going in and trying to add all the stuff to the structured markup fields or whatever, thinking they're helping their business, and then it all of a sudden diving, right? So I like where you're coming from here, because that 60% of the customer base, you're not going to expect them to be able to implement the most advanced customized SEO settings there are. Given, to your point, giving them the ability to rank is really step one. And then also, you know, it's not apples to apples, so to speak, but when you're talking about the closed CMS system, like Shopify kept on popping in my head, right? Yep. So Shopify has become a little bit more malleable, a little bit more customizable in the past, recent year or so. But beforehand, I mean, we're really talking about an interface where the templates were different. There are some differences if someone could code up Liquid Web or whatever, but very, very similar from a URL structure perspective, very, very similar from whatever it may be. And someone really has to know their apps to integrate that extra layer on top of it. So I like the fact that you're giving them the keys to drive, right? But you're not letting them go above like 30 miles an hour, right? Because what you don't want to do is give someone your Tesla and tell them about ludicrous speed, and the next thing you know, they're running off the road, right? Because they can't handle it. Like you want to kind of take
100%.
those steps. So by setting up a course or setting up, a podcast, webinars, or whatever, you can train someone up. But if the first goal is to take that restaurant's menu off of a PDF and put it on a web page, they don't really need to know and be exposed to everything from an advanced SEO perspective. But you also have the SEO capabilities behind the scenes to be able to help them out en masse.
Yeah. I mean, first off, the idea of, if you think back maybe 2-3 years ago, where the CMSs were and where they are now, such an interesting conversation to have. Like, there's so much investment, whether it's Shopify or Wix or whatever it is, around SEO. And just how that's sort of taken off. And I'll tell you, just from our user base, the hottest topic among our users is SEO, hands down.
Oh, wow.
They want to know, and I think it speaks to like there's an intrinsic relationship between your website and Google, as opposed to say social media. If you don't post your content on social media, it doesn't exist there.
Right.
If you spin up a site, unless you de-index a page or de-index the whole site, which you would have to actively do in these platforms, you have an inherent connection to Google. It just exists. And I think people intuitively understand that, which is a cool point to focus on. But yeah. But in terms of, yeah, you're right. Like, you don't want to give them the keys and 88 miles an hour and they end up back in the future. You look, like, we'll do things. We'll try to you can change, trying to think of a good case. You're on your blog or product pages. You can change the folders, the subfolders, right? Which is cool, which is great. But now you have to redirect all of the previous URLs. Mm-hmm. So we automatically do that. So like that kind of thing's built in there. If you change this, if you go ahead and you find the structured data and you want to customize, first of all, you sure you want to customize this? And then there'll be an error. Like, it'll tell you, like, there's an error. Don't do this. Or redirect loops. Like, you can't do it. Like, it'll pull up an error for you. So trying to catch the user before they make the mistake is really, really important. And it's really important. I think it's important for the health of the web. Because you guys cover this on Search Engine Journal. There was an SEO way back, like maybe a year and a half ago, who wanted to do a test between Wix and WordPress.
Yeah. And
then John Mueller stepped in like, those tests are never really objective. You're not actually building a real site. But John's comment eventually was, hey, most of the closed CMS, most of these platforms handle the technical side well enough. Most of the problems that SMBs have are with content. I think, by the way, most of the sites on the web in general have a problem with content.
Yes, they do.
But it allows people, having those things focused on and taken care of, allows you to focus on creating really good content. Which, by the way, if you go, I did this experiment. I've gone with like 1,000 websites, not Wix. So I did this at Semrush. And if you go through and try to look at the homepage and then say, okay, what does this website do? I would say around 70% of the time, you're like, I am completely confused what the heck this website does.
Because of the lack of content and the ability to explain themselves.
Yeah, lack of content to explain like who you are, what you do, what pain point you serve, and why you should use me.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of pain points and speaking of what normal people know about SEO, right? We do have a question that comes in because I get this question all the time. PageSpeed to me is in the new PageRank, right? It's something that anyone can take a site, plug it into something. They're like, oh, you may think you know everything about SEO, but Google's saying that you have you're scoring a 50 on mobile. I'm like, that's great because of all the scripts. But point being, it's something that translates across like every single line. Everyone's aware of it. Muharim asks, and also a reminder to anyone that's watching live right now, you can go ahead and type in questions within LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, etc., Twitter, and we'll see them. So I'll go ahead and ask the good ones that come through. I'm not going to ask the question. Well, okay. So first of all, how integrated is PageSpeed in Wix from an overall experience standpoint? And at Wix, do you offer anything better than, say, like WordPress's latest Performance Lab offering? Right. So
that's a great question. So, okay, let's take the last one first. Okay. So Wix is what you're getting with a platform like Wix is economy of scale. Like the idea is that the things that the plugin will do for you, our developers will do for you. So you don't have to do a lot of those things. That's not to say that we don't want to give you the ability to customize things, right? So there are a lot of things you can do when it comes to optimizing a website for, say, Core Web Vitals. I don't want to focus on the number. People get lost on the number. The number doesn't actually mean, like in terms of ranking, like the number doesn't necessarily mean anything. You can have a 50 and pass Core Web Vitals. You can have a 20. You can have 100. You can have 100. You can have like an 80 and not pass one of the Core Web Vitals. So that's a different conversation. But we definitely want you to have the ability to customize things, and you can customize a lot of things. I had a conversation recently with the person who's running performance, Alon Kochba. You can check it. He's got a great blog post on WebDev about what Wix is doing for performance, maybe like a year ago, around CDNs and that kind of thing. So, like, for example, so CDN. So we'll automatically serve you the most optimal CDN. Okay. The optimal server, right? So, like, the things that you will be doing to customize it for yourself, like, we'll do that for you, which is great, because do you really want to be touching your server and locking yourself out of your website? Probably not.
No.
Right. On the other side, so performance is like one of these like awesome subjects because it's so complicated, it's so nuanced, and because everyone has a problem with it. And it's not at the point where I think Core Web Vitals, by the way, the thing that Core Web Vitals really did, in my personal opinion, was like kick the CMSs in the ass to get their act together. Because if you look at the crux data, you see like Google announcing Core Web Vitals, and all of a sudden you see everyone's score is starting to rise.
Oh yeah, it's
It's
true.
amazing. So like in the US, like 50% of Wix sites pass Core Web Vitals, which is freaking awesome. Now there's the other. What about the other 50%? So yeah, performance is one of those things that it's like a never-ending thing to fix, to work on. Like if you think like, yeah, I got my site 100, like that's not, as an industry, as an entity of sorts, that's not how performance works. It's something you're constantly trying to get better and do better with, and it's going to constantly. The Core Web Vitals that we have now, personal opinion, 3 years from now, they're going to be different.
I think so. I think it's going to change all the time because it's going to be. I mean, first of all, it's relevant to the space that you're competing in as well, right? But there's going to be relevancy as the rest of the web increases. There's going to be more relevancy there, and then now we already have mobile and desktop, right?
Right. Now desktop. Right.
Yeah, and then next is going to be something else and something else, and the fact that it's named Vitals, right? Like the fact that it's just named Core Web Vitals really scares the heck out of just about anybody. It really makes it seem, my vitals are poor. I need to get them. Needs improvement, or I need to get them.
What happens after I fix it? Probably not much, but you have to fix it. Yeah. Which, by the way, is another point that I know SEOs probably don't like. Well, if I'm going to say this, performance to me is a conversion issue more than it is an SEO issue. If you have a poor experience on your site, let's say just forget speed itself, like CLS. If the shopping cart button is moving around, or if I accidentally add something to the cart I didn't intend to add, I am out. I am so out.
Yeah. I agree with you, because a lot of what comes up during, these speed and performance audits I put together, it's just not considered SEO, right?
Right.
And I know there's rendering components, and that's all dev. And there's also things like, your largest contentful paint and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I can work with the dev team to like minimize the image size, to minimize the impact, to have like some responsive imaging where you're serving what is it, WebP to Chrome, and then others to Safari or whatnot. Like that all makes sense. Like that's a fairly, if you talk to a dev that gets it, they get it, right? But then when you get into things like you just said, like the mobile, the purchase button moving around, or the space in between whatever not being enough for a mobile experience, like, yeah, you need multiple teams working on that for a couple of reasons. One, people are, hey, why'd you change this? Or why do you want to change the purchase button? Oh, because I want to improve conversions. But you're only talking about SEO conversions. You're not talking about the other 60 to 80% of sales that we get through our site right now, right? Yep. And then as an SEO, my go-to is always some Cloudflare study that shows like the increase in conversion rate as the site goes faster. It's just like a block pyramid, right? So as it gets faster, your conversion rate goes up. Really impactful and good to see. But as the SEO, should I be the one that's introducing that? And shouldn't I have all hands at the table to introduce that, right? Because it gets it approved, which is good for SEO. But if my efforts spent on SEO are improving the conversion rate of PPC and the conversion rate of social traffic and the conversion rate of branded traffic and the conversion rate of something else, I kind of think I should be part of that reward system once all those conversion rates go up, right?
I would tend to agree with you.
Yeah. So yes, I agree. You had said earlier that maybe we could get into a little bit of discussion around closed versus open CMS. Yeah. So we've been talking about Wix as being a closed CMS. Could you go a little bit deeper into the differences between closed and open CMSs, and then the pros and cons behind each of those?
Yeah. So open CMS is kind of like WordPress, where you can go in there, you can access the source code, you can change I'll say it in a way that I don't mean it. You can do whatever you want, kind of thing.
Yeah,
right.
If you want to.
Yeah, if you want to, which you probably should. It's another different story. A closed CMS. You talk about Wix, Squarespace, Shopify. You're never going to be able to access the source code, right? That's the whole idea of it. Which, by the way, has pros and has cons. So there are certain things that you can't change. That doesn't mean, by the way, and I'm not talking just about Wix. That doesn't mean whatever CMS that you're using. And again, it depends on which one you are using. There are things that you would be surprised that you can or can't change.
Okay.
Right? Like, I want to run Hotjar on my Wix. Yeah, you can add whatever tag you want. Like, you just go into the settings. You can just add it to the header of the page. Like, you can do that. You might not realize you can do that, right? I want to add, all sorts of JavaScript function. Yeah, you can do all of that. We have this is like I love pulling this card out. Wix is a full stack dev tool.
Okay.
Right? Like Wix is a full stack. Well, you can't change anything with Wix. And again, I'm not trying to say like just Wix. With a closed CMS, you think you can't change. There's a full stack dev tool that I don't appreciate because I don't know how to use it.
Well, also there's a lot of enterprise full stack dev solutions or whatever that it can take a month to get a change in.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, but if someone's adding, so within Wix, you have the ability to add JavaScript snippets and different tag snippets based upon what someone's running. Can I add that? Do you have the ability within Wix to add that to GTM to just serve all of that through there? Or does it all?
Yeah, you can absolutely use GTM. You don't have to, right? But yeah, you could definitely integrate with GTM. Like one of the things like they recently solved, I'm thinking maybe a year and a half ago, is like, well, now it's going to change freaking hell because of the whole Google Analytics thing. But we'll fire the events for you to your enhanced e-commerce events, so you don't have to do it through Tag Manager. You could like to do it that way, but that's what I mean. Okay, that's a good point about like a close. Sorry.
Do you prioritize those firings?
So yeah, we prioritize. I'm going to say yes, but I should double check that.
Okay, cool.
But yeah,
that would be awesome. Okay. Awesome.
I'm sorry,
which direction you want to go before I interrupted you?
No. So I was going to say that's one of the things about a closed CMS. It's really what you're working with is like an economy of scale, right? There are things that you don't necessarily have to do that you could do. And that also means, okay, I'll give you a good example of this. Open CMS, I can change all my server settings.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is a complaint I hear from SEOs sometimes. Like, yeah, but at Wix I can't do that. Which is again, like, I've quote John Mueller about this topic. Why would you want to do that? But fine. However, with something like a closed CMS, you don't have to worry about, all those vulnerabilities that I see Roger writing about on SEJ all the time don't exist. Yeah. Right? When Amazon, the whole downtime that Amazon's CDN had, we had zero downtime for that because we do use that. We just shifted off of it for you.
Oh, now that's interesting. So when there's a problem with the Amazon CDN or whatever, which there was, especially the week of the 24th of last month, you all just make that switch behind the scenes.
Yep.
Doesn't affect the user at the end of the day. Doesn't really affect the customer. They don't know their site's down or had a chance to go down. It's all good because you know what? You don't want the person that's running a local tire shop or whatever. They don't have time to worry about that.
Most people don't have time to worry about this,
etc. Right?
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
There's a stat I forgot. If you head over to Crystal Carter's LinkedIn profile, she recently put a post about this. You can see there's a whole chart of like what happened during the outage. But yeah, so there's pros and cons, and I don't think WordPress is for everybody. I don't think Wix is for everybody. I don't think Shopify is for everybody. There's definitely different strokes, different folks. You have different needs. But it's not a zero-sum. Like, well, I can customize everything and whatever I want to do and move my servers over with WordPress, so therefore it's better. That's not how this works. I know that's how we often speak about it, but there's a whole set of like pros and cons that you need to go into and understand. By the way, not just like the SEO abilities of a platform. You need to understand what that platform offers in general, right? What's the e-com offering? What's the blog offering? How does all this stuff work outside of like, I can edit my robots.txt file.
Great. And also about those vulnerabilities you were talking about, you're referring mostly, in addition to CDNs going down from time to time, WordPress plugin vulnerabilities. Because we were
Yeah.
talking a little bit before the show about this, and my comment was that, I think within WordPress.com, there's plenty of great tools for small business owners to utilize, but WordPress.com doesn't market themselves as that. And then Christina on our end, who's behind the scenes right now, let us know that, at their agency, they had decided to utilize closed CMS solutions like Wix and others because of, just the cost, right?
Yeah.
Of having all of these developers on to make these tweaks here, to make these tweaks there, to update this here, to update this there. And it's true. Like, we spend a lot of time at SEJ updating, purging, whatever it may be on the plugin side. I spend a lot of time with clients doing that, things like that. And I know there's some InMotion hosting, WordPress dedicated hosting. I know they do a good job of making sure what plugins people are utilizing. WP Engine's very good at that. They used to be very restrictive in terms of what plugins you could add or not add. And now they're good at alerting you if there is a problem or being proactive on that end too. But within a closed solution, it doesn't sound like that's an issue at all.
It's not an issue. Like, I'm not trying to get on WordPress. Like, WordPress has, there's a lot of great things with WordPress.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that's just not an issue with a Wix site, which is, again, something you need to factor in. Like, in general, like, one of the things, the way I talk about this is what happens when you leave, right? If you're an SEO, you're there for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is, and then you're gone, and then the next day something breaks. How does that reflect back on you? Like, the client's going to understand, well, it wasn't really me. There's a vulnerability, something I can't control that. I understand, like, yes, in reality, it's not your fault, but the client's not going to understand that.
No, not necessarily.
Right? So that's
or
one
if
of
the dev leaves, or if whoever leaves,
whatever it is, right?
Or the nephew or the niece or the nephew that's doing the development for their uncle or aunt behind the scenes that needed the extra help. They go away to college, they get a job, they can't do it anymore. So
my
trying to figure out.
Grandkid says, "I got this, Grandpa. I'm going to work on your site." Completely screws it up because there's a million scenarios. Again, I'm not saying it's a reason to or not to use Wix or to use WordPress, but it's something that should factor in depending upon the type of client or personality that you're dealing with.
What are one of the weaknesses that closed CMS solutions have when comparing them to open CMS solutions?
So again, like, it's one of those things, like, sometimes things are less scalable. So one of the things we're working on now is making sure, like, you have the ability to, like, bulk edit everything possible, which didn't exist. Like, if you want to see all of your, title tags, let's say, you want to edit all of them in one shot. So I think traditionally, closed CMSs haven't been so great with scalability, which is one of the things, like, the reason why we're trying to work on that. So that's definitely something to consider. They have their own idiosyncrasies, about how they work, that I think a lot of people, if you're used to using WordPress, and then although not WordPress, the CRM, but the open source, and you're trying to come into Wix, it's a different experience. It'll take you a little while to get used to it, I think. Which, again, if you're an SEO and you're short on time, and you just the pain point of having to learn GA4, right? Yeah. Which is a whole other wormhole.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that could be really frustrating to come in and try to figure something out and understand, because every platform has its own logic. It's like using an SEO tool, right? Yeah. You go for one, like, Nike's like, I got to figure, like, I was so used to this thing. Now how do I do this? It's very similar, actually, because, like, each one has its pros and cons. Like, that tool does this better than the way this tool does. That's pretty much what it's like. But it's a matter of, like, okay, I know all of the things I can or can't do in this other tool. I want to have to switch to this tool.
Gotcha. Yeah. There's some great SEO tools out there that have horrible usability, right? They look like they were built in 1999.
Like 1995.
Yeah. And then there's some that have great usability, but maybe not the best data, right? And then there's some that have maybe not the best of both worlds, but it works on both sides as well. So really finding your sweet spot there is interesting. Speaking of SEO tools and CMSs, I'm really interested in hearing about the time that you spent at Semrush. You're still consulting at Semrush now. You're in-house, right? But you're in-house on the tool side and the CMS side. So what are the differences that you've run into working for tools like Semrush and Rank Ranger versus working on the CMS side at a company like Wix?
So it's really, I love working on the tool side. It's just fascinating, like, to see what goes on behind the scenes, like the pain points that people in the SEO communities have, and sometimes they're like really legit issues they have with the tools, and sometimes it's like the tools aren't God, like they can't do that, like that's just not happening. I don't understand what you're like asking. It's very different, actually. Like I would compare working for, or you're dealing with like an SEO tool versus a CMS. A CMS like was much closer to like actual SEO. Which is one of the reasons I really enjoy working at Wix, because I feel like one is I get to actually talk to clients all the time and like work on their sites, which is awesome. I love working with SMBs particularly. But you're thinking about how would an SEO use this? What would the workflow be like? What's the impact on this? What's the impact on Googlebot? You're not really worried about Googlebot when you're working at Semrush kind of thing, right? You're not trying to rank anything. It's a different kind of like factoring in, like you're trying to understand. What's that?
You're worried about trying to emulate Googlebot.
Yeah, so right. There you go. Yeah, 100%. Like, and there's a setting in Semrush where you can emulate Googlebot in your site audits. Anyway, it's a different beast altogether. I think like the pain point for SEO tools is trying to throwing all this data. You go into Semrush, you're just getting like a spattering of data. And then how do you make that actionable? Like, how can I use this now? And I think that's where the tools like have their work cut out for them. You see like Semrush trying to do something like that with like the intent, right? So now you can filter by intent. That saves you a lot of time, and it makes it a little more like understandable and actionable. Now that I have all this keyword research data, I can sort of parse this out in a way that actually would help me focus a little bit more. That's always like the hard part for the tool, which is like a fascinating thing, because I think it's, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's a schism that you can't really bridge. And I think that, and as much as it probably would pain SEOs to hear this, that you got to make your thing out of the tool. Like you got to take that tool, you got to make it work for you.
Everybody uses it differently, and it's very interesting when I watch someone else utilize a tool like Semrush or Ahrefs or Moz or whatever it may be, or Majestic, and like I was watching someone use Semrush the other day, and they went straight to their it's like the crawl report percentage, right?
Yeah.
In the dashboard, they went straight to that. And I was like, oh, interesting. I've never done that before.
Yeah.
That's never been the first thing that I look at. Like when I'm running an audit, like the first thing I look at is what's wrong.
Or the errors.
I hide what's not important, right? First thing I hide is the text to HTML ratio. Like, get out of here.
That is, by the way, like the bane of my existence, because I'll get people from Wix users who do use Semrush saying, hey, I have this problem because a closed CMS is going to inject more code. Just the way it's going to work. I have a low code because I have a thin page. Now I have the low code to text ratio. I'm like, it's not a thing. No, but Semrush said that it is. I'm like, I love Semrush, literally love Semrush, but it's not a thing.
And they do a good job of prioritizing the issues. I would bump up permanent redirects a little bit. I would bump them up to errors. That's just the way I think, right? So the first thing I do is I hide or limit, or I know what I want to get to later, also based upon the client.
Yeah.
Based upon whether or not I'm making the fixes, the client side is making the fixes, and everything else, right? So just talking about my own, like that, the reason why I'm sharing my own experience is because that's just the way I do it. Someone else may do it entirely differently, and there's no right or wrong way. I do like the fact that they give you the ability to hide or customize to an extent how that report is put together. And then you download everything and take it from there. And then there's some folks, they do everything within the tool, right? They don't see that audit as being like something that they're taking the data and then utilizing afterwards. They're checking everything along that course, or maybe they're taking the keyword research and putting that into the keyword magic tool and then utilizing that for content briefs. But the fact that the keyword research is there, me being an SEO is not used to having all this within one dashboard, I'm going to download it and go through it and spreadsheets and everything else, do
Right.
some filtering, whatever it may be, but everyone uses it differently. So that's a good point. Are you doing anything on the tool side within the Wix backend? It's been a while since I've logged into a Wix site's admin.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in there now.
Okay, what are some of the tools that you're offering from an SEO?
So by the way, there's a deep crawl integration, so you can get a site audit through deep crawl. It's like an app.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's like equivalent of a plugin. So it's closed CMS don't have plugins; they have apps. There's I guess I can tease this. There's another integration with the wider SEO community coming soon, which will be nice.
What is it?
I can't say. It's close to my heart though, so you can take that as whatever that means. Okay. There's bulk redirect tools in there, so you can upload 500 URLs and bulk redirect them. There's I guess the way I'll explain it for those of you who are not familiar with Wix, kind of like Yoast, where you can have variables that you can add on to, like, say, your title tag. We call it SEO patterns, so it's going to be renamed soon. So basically, if you have your it's by page type level. So I don't know, blogs, and you want. I don't want to have to write a title tag for my blog. So do me a favor, pull in the H1, which, by the way, Wix will automatically pull in the H1, so you don't have to do that. But whatever it is, you want to add the author name to every single one of your title tags for your blog posts. So you can set up a variable that does that, so you don't have to edit, right? Or product pages. So I don't want to write a meta description. Make my product description the meta description. So one click, done. That kind of thing.
Very cool. Very cool. We did have some questions come in while we were talking. Miguel asks, and we've already talked about Semrush and some other tools. So outside of those, what are the best SEO toolkits from your perspective that you've? What are some lesser known SEO toolkits?
There's a whole bunch of them, and it depends what you're looking for, right? Like, I always loved Rank Ranger for SERP feature analysis. Like, they'll tell you, so say a featured snippet, they'll tell you day by day what URLs are ranking for the feature snippets. You can see, okay, Wikipedia's been in there for the last 3 years. I'm not going to target that. Or you can see, hey, you know what? They're showing Wikipedia, but then they're interchanging it like every other day with another website. So that's something I can go for. So they're always like small, and always there's all first off, there's tons of extensions. Right. And I like SEO Clarity is a cool extension from SEO. What's it called? They call it Spark or something like that. So you can basically see the keywords that are there, backlinks, headers, tags, all that kind of stuff. So there's a ton of these things that you don't know about. I think, by the way, someone's got to have a blog post on this, but all the Chrome extensions that are out there are just freaking amazing. There's so many of them. Or even just WAP Analyzer, if you're using that, I don't know if people use that or not. I use that all the time. To see what's going on.
WAP Analyzer?
WAP Analyzer, yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. So it'll tell you the CMS. It'll tell you if they have Google Analytics integrated, or if they're using I'm trying to think any other sort of integration they have on the site itself. I'll just pull it up now for StreamYard. Let's see what's going on here. They have a widget for Facebook. They have Twitter Analytics. They have Google Analytics. They have Facebook Pixel. JavaScript frameworks, they're using React. They have font scripts. They have Google Font API. They have Stripe set up. They have Twitter ads set up. The CDN is Cloudflare, et cetera, which is just an awesome little Chrome extension.
Yeah, one of my favorites is the detailed extension, which who put this out? Gosh.
We're going through our Chrome extensions now, China.
Created by detailed. Hold on, I can't remember his name.
Should we Google it?
Sorry about the dead air time.
Yeah, it's like an awkward first date now.
I went to his about page and it's a 404. Glenn.
Now you can't see who it is because then it'll be embarrassing.
Yeah. Glenn Alsop. I can't remember what his handle used to be, but it's detailed.com. I just love the extension because it's so simple. I can dig into what they're doing, what a site's doing with their schema, how that's set up. There's little quick links here and there, but I'm a big fan of this. And then I also just searched Google for top SEO Chrome extensions, and you know what? Search Engine Journal is not in the. I don't see us we got to do a post on this. It's HubSpot, neilpatel.com, Ahrefs, Moz, Blogging Wizards, 99 Signals, SEO Sly, so Shane Barker. So
now I know what to expect tomorrow on the front page of SEJ. Now I know what to expect tomorrow on the front page of SEJ.
Yeah, I think this post can rank in the top 3 within a day. So given the competitive set, so we're gonna add this to our editorial calendar. Thank you so much. That's the value that we really got from this today. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Chrome extensions myself, and then also I'm curious. How many of you that are watching right now, and just feel free to chime in, and you too, Mordy, are you an active user of Bing Webmaster Tools along with Search Console?
No. I mean, I have it set up. Like I look at it once in a while.
Yeah. I do the scans every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I would say one of my favorite tools out there is Search Console from a toolkit perspective. It's just getting better and better and better.
It's the go-to SEO. It's a foundational SEO tool.
I agree. Yeah. And then Eric says no, it does not use Bing. So yeah,
it's good though. It's really good.
What's that?
Bing's webmaster tools are really good. I just don't use them.
And their site scan is not that bad either. Like you can run a crawl on your site and it'll give you a series of issues with H1s, titles, all of that stuff. It's actually like a nice little tool right within their system. Cool. It's been a real pleasure having you today on Mordy. Is there anything that you want to drop about yourself, your podcasting, your blogging, anywhere else? By the way, what school did you work in Baltimore?
Oh, Beachfield Elementary.
What's that next to?
It's on the Baltimore city side of Catonsville.
Okay.
Like by Edmondson.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the actual name of the neighborhood and I can't. Maybe it's Beachfield. I don't know.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, look it up.
And besides that, what about podcasting? What have you been doing on the podcast?
I run a little podcast. I just do it for kicks. It's nothing as serious as this. Called the SEO Rant, where I try to have some different conversations about topics that you normally wouldn't have on a podcast because you're not going to get 1,000 listens for it. Like I'll do that because I don't care. I'm just doing it for fun. And I try to showcase people who maybe haven't had a lot of exposure in the SEO industry. I think there's a lot of underexplored talent out there.
I think so too.
So I'll try to have people on like, you haven't been on every SEO podcast? Perfect.
There you go. Cool. In addition to seeing people, how different people use different tools, I'm also blown away sometimes when I talk to some SEO consultants that I've never met before in my life, through this whole quote thing that we have around like the industry. Like it's such a small group of our networks, cohorts that we are in Facebook groups with or go to conferences and things like that. Going in and meeting in-house SEOs is just like one of my favorite things to do, or like SEOs that work for a development company or something like that. Because it's like really cool to see where they're coming from, what they know, and then like, oh wow, like you're totally blowing me away with everything how come I've never met you before? Right.
And they're you don't know, they keep like a low profile. You don't know who they are. Because like who's the SEO for I don't think of a company. I don't know, like GE. I have no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's someone there and they gotta be freaking cool, right?
Exactly. And where can we find you on Twitter?
At Mordy Oberstein. That's my name with the @ sign in front of it.
Okay, so I'm going to drop some links to your Twitter profile. I'm going to drop some links to your podcast, which I've already done. And then also, are you on LinkedIn, Mordy?
I'm on LinkedIn. I do LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, but I don't really like using Facebook. So please, you can leave that off.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll have a lot of this in the recap. If there's any questions that come in for you that are listening or watching afterwards, please feel free to list those questions in the comments. Or even you can email me at Loren, Loren at searchenginejournal.com if you have any specific questions for Mordy if you're listening afterwards. Really appreciate your time today that you've taken away from Wix and from Semrush of joining the show. Also, you are in Israel, so it's almost 11 o'clock at night.
It's almost 11 o'clock at night. Yeah, but by the way, it's perfect timing because my kids are sleeping. So thank you for that.
I know. I'm an early bird myself. I'm usually up working at 4 a.m. because the house is quiet. So I love it.
Right. There you go. Perfect.
Love it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Mordy. Thanks so much. Thanks to all the listeners and viewers of the SEJ Show. Really looking forward to some upcoming episodes that we're having. We're going to be talking about with Lisa Beyer, marketing in the metaverse next week. Next week's show will be on Friday. I find that incredibly interesting, and I really want to find what we can do from a digital marketing / SEO tie-in there. And then we have a lot of really cool episodes coming up. So thanks again, Mordy Oberstein from I almost said from Semrush, from Wix.com twice, the Grover Cleveland of SEO, from Wix to Semrush, back to Wix. Really looking forward to seeing what you're putting out there. And if there's anything you need in the future, let me know. And you're very approachable as well on Twitter, I've found, right?
Yeah. 100%.
If any of you that are listening right now are Wix users or Wix customers, feel free to hit up Mordy online with any additional questions. And I'm sure those questions may help you put together
your I love it.
webinars and everything else.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mordy. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one, and see you next week on the SEJ Show.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Search Engine Journal Show. If you liked this episode, subscribe to our channel for so much more and click the notification bell so